Hello friends, welcome to today's daily devotion. I am Kerry Wood, pastor of the Goldston Methodist Church in Goldston, North Carolina, and we are working our way through an understanding of scriptural holiness. This series of devos is called Free to Be Holy, and we have spent several weeks trying to better understand what it is that God calls people to be, especially as global Methodists, which is what Goldston Methodist is, because our mission is to make disciples of Jesus Christ and spread scriptural holiness across the globe. Today we're looking in Paul's letter to the church in Rome. And this week we're going to be exploring Romans and some various passages in that letter to better understand what Paul is describing as the purpose of holiness. Well, to begin this, we've got to first go backwards, not to the beginning of the Bible again, but to human nature and the explanation as to what's wrong with humanity. So Paul tells us this in Romans chapter 1, starting in verse 18 and reading through 23. I hope you have your Bibles out and open. Go ahead and pull it to Romans chapter 1 in the New Testament and let us share these words together. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified Him as God nor gave thanks to Him. But their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like a mortal human being and birds and animals and reptiles. Now, Paul wrote these words 2,000 years before us reading them here today, and yet he's talking about the history that was thousands of years old already in his day. And so Paul is going back all the way to the beginnings of the human race, and he says, look, folks, when God created heavens and earth, God did so to reveal the goodness of God, His invisible qualities, His eternal power, and His divine nature. And humanity, ever since the beginning, has failed to see it, not because they couldn't, because they didn't want to. And so the wrath of God is about the human desire not to know anything about God. And if Paul is describing something that was ancient in his time and trying to get people to correct it, how much more so in our time do we still need to pay attention to this and make the appropriate corrections? The wrath of God is not about God wanting to smite people down. The wrath of God is because God has to have wrath against unrighteousness, because God is righteousness. If God were to be able to ignore the realities of humanity's rebellion against God, then God wouldn't be righteous. Sin is rebellion against God. And I have to admit that there are times in my life when I have rebelled against God. And I think if you're going to be honest in your own self-reflection, you will recognize that that is true in you as well. And that's why humanity is in so much trouble. That's why we have such deep divisions and disagreements among peoples all around the world, even right inside our own families. Because we've looked to everything but God as a source of what we ought to pay attention to, what we ought to worship. But the truth of the matter is, only God is worthy of our worship. Now, what this means for us, come back again tomorrow as we continue to explore scriptural holiness in our next daily devotion.